It's now time for On the Line with Cheryl Wilkerson. The conversation will range from local dialogue to international. This show is meant to enlighten, inform, and to inspire. On the Line with Cheryl Wilkerson begins now.
Hello and welcome to On the Line. I'm your host, Cheryl Wilkerson. In the studio today, Mr. Chester Benton. He's going to tell us about Black radio back in the day. It's a compelling story. It's an interesting story. People don't know what went on behind the scenes. So today, Chester, as much as you want to tell us without, us getting killed or something,
okay.
you can tell us.
Yeah. Well, first we're going to start off talking about Black radio. First, let me say that I had the privilege of being mentored by Jack Holmes, Daddy Jack Holmes, who was one of the original 13 announcers in the United States and the first announcer here in the Hampton Roads area. Jack actually started his career at a station called WLOW, which happened to be in Norfolk. And they were looking for someone to do what they call Negro products. And at that time, there was a company that was promoting a product called, Sweet Peach Snuff.
Okay.
And so Jack was an entertainer and a singer, and he was a good pitch man. And so they hired Jack on WLOW to do 15 minutes a day to promote Sweet Peach Stuff. And he would sit in the window at one of the stores and say, put a pinch between your cheek and your gum.
Okay. And
he sold Sweet Peach Stuff. Later from that, he went on to be hired and have a full-time job at WRAP because LOW was not doing complete race radio, as they call it. And WRAP, Rain Rollins, who was a car owner in the area, decided that he was going to devote his station to race radio, and they hired Jack Holmes, and that's how Jack got it started as the first Black. As we go back to early radio, Black radio, Black people had really no control, no power.
None.
They were basically just workers, and you had no Black program directors, no Black music directors.
So a program director, you want to explain what that is?
A program director is the person that's in charge of all of the announcers on air and the actual content that is being put over the air to go after a certain audience or a certain demographic.
So they know every public service announcement, every song, every commercial. They know everything that's
going on. They know everything
that
goes on in the station, and they actually plan it. It's a pre-planning. When you go on the air, there are certain things that you have to do, and the program director is the one responsible for giving you that information.
And no Black people were doing that.
No Black people were doing that. No Black people were in sales. When you were Black, you were just an entertainer, basically, and that's what radio was about, being an entertainer.
That's that mirrored television, really. Same thing was going on.
Same thing with everything. So a lot of people don't understand how far we have really come. Because Mr. Rollins, he was one of the what you call the white people that kind of believed in Black people because of the relationship he had with Jack. He allowed Jack and Leola Dyson to actually do more things than they could have done in other markets with other stations. Leola, because she was the public affairs director, and so those were the two names. If you go back, there were a lot of other people. There was a guy named Bob King that supposed to had a really great voice. There was a guy named Oliver Allen. There was a couple of other people during that era that was on the radio, but all of the trust was placed in Jack and Leola. And Leola created so many programs to help the community. She was very community-minded. She created the Homemaker's Holiday, and she was one of the few Blacks that was allowed to actually go out to New York and make business trips. And again, we go back to the era where you had race-based products.
Yes.
Yeah, the hair salons, the Quaker Oats, the Uncle Ben's Rice, General Foods, all these type of business. And she talked them into coming in and doing the home-based holiday at the Norfolk Arena, and they would give away baskets to the different people in the community. Everybody was lined up all the way around the arena for to come and get those baskets. And because she had established a relationship with Illinois Eleanor Roosevelt. She actually came into a few of those, and that kind of put the station on the map. Now, one thing is that Rollins not only owned WRAP, but he owned a station called WBEE in Chicago. He owned KDAY in Los Angeles, and he owned a station W something in Dover, Delaware, not Dover, Delaware, in Delaware, right around where Philadelphia is. So a lot of the concepts and ideas that were created by Daddy Jack and Leola, they also hit the major markets of Chicago and Philadelphia market based on them working here in Hampton Roads.
So Hampton Roads, you would say, would be a leader in what happened with black radio nationwide?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I would. One of the things is that remember that we are a large Navy market, a large military market, and a lot of people that came in the area and listened to radio in Hampton Roads would take some of the things that they heard, and these soldiers and sailors were not in the rating book, so you would find that you have at any given point 50,000 to 100,000 people in here on the bases listening to our radio station and going back home and expressing those ideas and things that they heard here. So we were key and instrumental of everything that happened in radio in the country.
Radio has changed so much. So when I started radio way back in the day, you would go in and you would pick your songs you wanted to play, and they were on these big carts.
Yeah.
And you would just write down what you played, so the person that came in behind you would know not to play that.
Right.
But that doesn't happen.
No, it happened because at the time the announcers were the entertainers. They were in control. It was your show.
Yep.
And your job was based on the Arbitron rating book. So you had to succeed. You had to do well, because if you didn't do well after that rating book, you would be let go.
One book, that's right. You would be gone.
Yeah. So the people that were in radio at that time, they took time and effort in creating their craft. I remember I started in radio. I was a little big man. And I had a band, I had a theme song. You know, you had to have all of this because everybody else had it. Yeah. So you had to be smarter than or more creative than the other. Now, I started my career as Pronto, and I was a writer. I started writing for Soul Ranger. I used to write the Legends and Tales of Soul Ranger, where we would go into the neighborhoods and fight crime and pick out the worst or the baddest guy in the neighborhood and do stories on him, which would create listenership in that neighborhood. Because the Soul Ranger would go out and fight Buster Bear, who was the baddest guy in trucks, and the Soul Ranger would save the day. And these were like 5-minute little skits that I wrote and created for him.
People like Bobby J will remember he always did the letter.
Yeah.
Before people did the letter now, Bobby J was doing letters.
Yeah. And Bobby J actually started off at 15. He was on WHIH. He was BJ, Your Ever Loving DJ. And later when he came back, it was BJ and Woofy. But then it was, BJ and E.T. But when he began, it was BJ and Woofy. And Bobby was very creative. And in high school, he was president of the student council, president of the debate club, president of the speech club. So to get into that door, you had to have some credentials. You couldn't just walk in off the street. You had to be articulate. You had to be sharply dressed. You had to have concern for the community, and most of all, you had to be creative.
And just to say now, Chester will explain to you that I can't walk in any radio station anywhere, well, especially not in big markets, and choose what I'm going to say, what I'm going to play. None of that. It's all controlled now. Because people will say, I keep hearing the same song over and over. You want to explain why you're hearing the same song over and over?
What happened was the announcers seemed to get too much control. Okay? When you had an announcer like King Hot Dog, Master Storyteller, when he had that control, he had the community. You couldn't fire him. You know, he was bringing you ratings, and we were dealing with small business. A lot of them were small rent-to-own type business who people would come into those stores based on what that person say. We often tell a tale about Floshime shoes. Jack Holmes did a commercial, and he called it Floor Shimmy. He called the shoes floor shimmy. So the manager, who happens to be white, was upset. I can't, fussing, because Jack messed it up. And the owner of the store said, I don't care what he said. People are tired of this. Then he went out, because there was a dance out at the time, as Jack told me the story, called the shimmy.
Oh, okay.
And Jack
you
said,
were going along with that. Okay.
Yeah, he said, go get your floor shimmy shoes. And the man put a big sign out, we sell floor shimmy shoes. So you had the power of the announcer, so you couldn't fire him. You couldn't really control him because he had the community behind him. You got to remember, there was no blacks on TV. There was no blacks in the news. We were it. They were it. So the owners decided that we need to find a way to control these guys. And so that's when they started creating formats. And they started creating what music that you played. Because, I mean, you know, payola was in existence then.
Explain what payola is.
Payola is getting money to play records. Okay, so at that time, an announcer could make more money in payola than he was. He didn't even care.
Made it a radio station.
He didn't care whether he got a check from the radio station or not, because people would pay him to play records, and they would also pay them to come in clubs. Jack used to tell me the story of how he used to do 4 clubs in one night. All he had to do was go in, light a cigar, sit back and say, I love this kind of carrying on. And the man would give him his money, and he would move on down to the next club. So putting in the formats was a way that they controlled. Giving you cue cards to read, it was the way that the owners, and then the owner could take control of what's happening on this radio station. And another thing, that they could fire you and nobody cared.
Right.
Because nobody had an individual personality to do that. I think that as we go back and we look, the last great personalities in this area were the Buddha Brothers. They were the last of the Mohegans in this area as far as personality is concerned, because they started hiring what they call a consultant.
Yes.
And your consultant is the guy is the guy that the owners pay to enforce their rules.
Yes.
You know, and they would put those consultants over the general manager of the radio station.
Yes. Because we were on the air in the morning and we had the ratings, but we weren't liked like that. Yeah. We were loved by the community, but not like that. So they replaced us with a syndicated show.
Yeah.
And
they did that because they cut down on salaries, they cut down on everything, and they had control.
Said, that's not going to work, and then they had to bring the Buddha Brothers in.
Back,
Well, they weren't going to say we made a mistake and we shouldn't have fired you all. Okay, So
but they
really
understood,
changed.
And that's why I say that they were the last of the people of that personality generation that could drive traffic, could go on the air and do whatever they wanted to and say what they wanted to, because they were bringing in the money, they was bringing in the numbers, and the merchants know the effect of the power of that dollar that they were bringing in.
Let's talk about some black radio owners. I'm talking to Chester Benton. We're about 15 minutes into the show already. I can't believe it. But let's talk about some black radio owners that did buy radio stations, and for a while it was really good.
Some black radio announcers?
No, the owners.
The owners? Okay, well, like I was saying before, Reagan Henry, there were so many black radio owners. James Brown owned stations, and there were a lot of black radio owners that didn't really have the money. And, you know, you heard about checks bouncing and all of this. Reagan Henry solidified because of his background as a lawyer and all. He came in and ran black radio as a business.
He was a lawyer, yeah,
and he ran black radio as a business. He made sure that you had all the necessary tools to work with. Plus, he had more than one station. He had a chain of stations. So he could find the best people because he could pay them.
Right.
Now, when you look at James Brown and some of the other ones, they were just getting by day to day. Okay. And you had to work. Well, even when Bishop Willis first started, it wasn't money there. So you couldn't get the best equipment. You didn't have the best engineers, so your station stayed off the air. You didn't have the right people in the right jobs. But let me say that I believe that during that era, radio was actually better than it was today because it was creativity in each market. If you rode from here to, say, New York, you would turn your dial to try to find the stations
Yes.
to find out what they was doing. You heard
Yes.
different songs, different music, different approaches. Now everything is cookie cutter. You can ride from here to California and back and hear the same 12 or 13
And
songs.
the same thing with the TV stations.
Yeah.
Yeah. One
Yeah.
script goes out and all the same stations do
Doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So that took away. At once the FCC, who's the Federal Communication Commission, will give money, additional money for black ownership. And so if you were black and trying to get into business, they made it easier for you to get into business. Now, it's still there, but it's not really meaning anything because they use the word minority.
Yes. Yes.
And by using the word minority, that included women.
Yes.
So the owners that own the stations would buy other stations with their wife in control. The FCC had a limit on the number of stations. You could only have one FM and one AM.
Yep.
Which means that there was competition and
Yep.
you was competing. Now that rule is that you could own 3 or 4
Yes.
AMs and 3 or 4 FMs and 2 AMs, which means that everything is under that one roof. So if you get fired, you basically fired.
You can't go to the station down the street anymore,
No,
right?
yeah. Well, not even in the nation, because with Live Nation, Clear Channel, iHeart, whatever they call themselves now, they own all of the stations in all the major markets. So if you get fired here, you can't go to Philadelphia and get a job because it's owned by iHeart.
Owned by the same.
It's owned by the
They
same.
always do the firings in December or like in January, especially when there's a new president. When the president comes in and the presidential inauguration, that's the day they're firing you because they think it's going to fly under the radar.
Well, it rides under the radar, and also I keep saying Live Nation because Clear Channel did own Live Nation. In fact, when I was selling, I used to have to sell for Live Nation. But iHeart, they have in the black rule. So when at the end of the year, going into the next year, all of their stations must be in the black. So the reason they fire in December and cut down on the staff and the money is because when you get into January 1st, all of their stations have to be in the black. And it don't make no difference. I remember a lot of times when I was at Huawei, the announcers would get #1 rating, be the top person, and he get his little bonus, and in January he's gone because they don't want to pay that salary. That's why across the country they was calling them cheap channel.
Yes. Whole internet groups devoted to them. Yes.
Yeah, because they clear the books at the end of the year and they go into the new year in the black.
And so when you're talking to your children and they might say, oh, I want to be on the radio or whatever, what do you say to them, Chester? What do you say to young people that say, I want to be on the radio?
Well, radio is a great field. Even though it's down to the point where you're not who you would have been 10 years ago, it's still a great opportunity because you get an opportunity to meet so many people. You know, if you look back at when Obama come to town, if you're on the black radio station, they're going to come to your station. And you're going to get a chance to meet or talk with him. And I'm just saying the name Obama, but anybody that's in prominence when they come, especially if you're on the morning show.
That is what happened last week with Pharrell.
Yeah.
We got to meet Pharrell because of the radio station. Yeah.
So it's, I think that the key to it is understanding where you want to go. Understanding what your goals are, creating those goals, and finding a way to meet them. The other thing is that when you come into any job, especially a media job, you got to read. You got to stay on top of the trends. You got to be prepared, And as Jack told me and all of us a long time ago, that we're a special club. We're the outlet to the community.
Yes.
And we, as our duty to be accepted in this special club, our duty is to make sure that we communicate. Now, the way that radio is now, it's hard to do that because you have so many restrictions, but that don't have anything to do with your speaking engagements and you're going out into the public.
Panels and
But you don't come in here to glorify yourself. You come here as a duty, and this is your job. As a lot of people say that God puts on earth to do a certain job. Once you're given that gift, you have to utilize that gift because that's how you become prosperous, by doing what you're supposed to do and utilizing your gift to help people. I run into people now that I gave concert tickets to or Christmas toys to that are 45, 50 years old, and they come up and
thank you. Yeah.
You know,
They'll
I remember.
You said my name on the radio back in 19 so because I got straight A's on my report. They remember everything.
And so you don't know how you're influencing these people till you come up. And I've been places they run up to me with their kids and say, "You Chester B?" I say, "Yeah, thank you so much." You know, and I'm going, you know, I'm doing my job, but that's the kind of announcer that you want to be.
We got about 10 minutes left in the program, Chester Benton. So tell me some of the names that people will recognize of people you worked with or people you met.
Okay. First of all, the announcers, I come from Portsmouth, graduate of IC Norcom High School, and one of the things that we pride ourselves in is that we had so many announcers come from there. Okay. We had Johnny Askew, we had Master Storyteller, we had a guy named Scipio Collins, we had Tony Washington, who was one of the first people that played jazz. We had Frankie Stewart, the Soul Ranger, guy Harvey Johnson the third, Bobby J, Maurice Ward, all of these people, H.J. Ellison, all of these are Portsmouth people. Others, I've met so many entertainers. I have had a close relationship with Prince throughout the year, had a close relationship with the Barcades, had a very close relationship with the Commodores. And in the music industry, there are people that you meet and they become your friends, and there are people that are just interested. Russell Simmons and I have a very close relationship. When we were doing rap music, because WRAP, I actually created the format for rap. I was the first 24-hour rap station in the country, and everybody would come here. Everybody would beat our door down. Flavor Flav, Run DMC, Salt and Pepper. We started these acts out.
They knew they could get their music played on the station where they couldn't on other stations.
Yeah, and they would come in for me. I had the Step Forward program. Instead of doing concerts with the artists, I would bring them in, and if the kids made better grades than they did the last report card, I would have a concert during lunchtime, and I would invite those people in, and those that fell down wasn't allowed, but that forced them for the next time because they didn't have a ticket. They
want to be left out. That's right.
Have to be left out. So, I had the opportunity. I'm fortunate because I had the opportunity to do what I felt like doing. I had the opportunity
to come up in the right era to be able to do that.
I came up where I had the opportunity to use my creativity to going back to what my mentor taught me to help enlighten the community. People say so much about rap, but when rap started off, rap was really a good thing.
Yeah, they're fussing about gangster rap.
Yeah, well, gangster rap was actually started because they found out they could make money. All kids want to do something that's risque between that age period, and nobody would allow them. They wouldn't allow you to say Don. They wouldn't allow you to use wrong English. They wouldn't allow you to do any of that. Rap, when it started, I used to use the term when I would present it, it's sort of like bebop was the jazz. It was a chance that you could express yourself in your own way and tell your own story. And that's what rap was all about. Gangster rap came out because they actually believed that they could fill the jails. The jails became...
Who is they? Who is they?
I can't say who they is, but...
Wait, they is corporate America? They is private business? Who is they?
They is corporate America and private business, who saw an opportunity to fill these kids' heads,
And why do you say you can't say the names?
Well, because it's kind of, difficult to pinpoint exactly who they are. But that day is somebody somewhere that's creating this. Now, I do know from my experience when I was at K-Day that they called all of the announcers together and asked them that they want to be millionaires. And they was encouraging them to play this rap music, this profanity-based music, so that they could fill the jails. And I actually had a run-in with NWA because I thought I was doing the right thing, and they felt that I was doing the wrong thing, and I was coming off of a panel, and they said, "Hey, we want to talk to you," right? And I said, "Okay."
They wanted to get you, Chester.
And they said they were going to jack me. Well, I'm a Portsmouth boy. I don't know what jack is. And I later found out that they was upset because I wouldn't let them play that record on the air there. And I had a private meeting with Eazy-E, and we talked and we discussed certain things. And I kind of understood where they were coming from. It enlightened me where they were coming from the conversation that I had with him. And we finally found a way to edit some of the songs so that we could play them. But certain songs, I just refused. So I kind of stood my ground, but we did have something, be able to work it out. And I feel that any time that you have something that you're totally against, you need to listen to the other side. Okay. And see how you can work things out, and that relationship turned out to be pretty good.
What names out there now that own Black radio? Who owns Black radio now? Are there any black faces?
Kathy Hughes.
That's it.
There are smaller companies that own, but to be a major player,
Jonathan Mason.
Yeah, you have to be the major player. You have to have a high grade signal that covers the whole market. Yes. And in a market like this, the average cost of one of those signals is $29 million.
So when Kathy Hughes started, she and her son Alfred they slept in the studio on the floor or whatever. She started at WOL in Washington, which was an AM station. Marion Barry helped her to get the license for the one in Baltimore. From that one, she actually came back to D.C. and bought another one, and then she became worldwide. And she's on the brink of making history as the first black person to own a casino. They're fighting her in Richmond, and they voted her down, but she has now moved to Richmond, and she is still pursuing that casino license, so we'll see what happens. Yeah. We have a few minutes left. Chester, what else do you want to say about black radio or encouragement you want to give people about moving into jobs in radio?
The first thing I would like to say is that radio is a very important industry. Jobs in communication are very important jobs. I know that people are on Facebook. I know that they're going to social media. Social media gives people a false impression.
It does.
Okay, because you have 5,000 listeners or viewers. You think you're doing something. Those people are not in it for you. They're in it for themselves, for self-gratification. Radio, every time you open that mic, you're talking to at least 25, 30,000 people. You can get your message across to those people. You could be just driving along and you heard something. And a lot of times it's educational. I remember, and I'll see if I can do this real quick, is that I was riding along going to D.C. one time, and I heard the lawyer from Portsmouth on the air talking about preparing yourself if a member of your family get Alzheimer's or and my father at that time was at that age where he was getting that, and he was talking about how you should prepare yourself now, get everything taken out of your name and all of this. And I'm just riding along, have no intention. And I heard this information, and I shared it with my brothers and my family, and we were able to, before my father was actually diagnosed with dementia, to get everything out of his name and everything, which saved us from basically losing everything that he had worked for and accomplished over those years.
Before they're going to help you, you cannot have any assets. So you got to get everything out of their name.
And so we found how to do that. And that's from just listening to the radio.
That's my mission every day when I wake up, Chester. I just want to give people information. I know I'm not the hippest with the music, especially the rap music or whatever, but it is my passion to give people information, and that's why I had you on today, because you've given out great information about black radio.
Yeah, and we need people like you, people like the station, that comes in with a commitment to serve the community. You know, all of this craziness going on with the elections and this, that, and the other. If people had more than 60 seconds to tell the story, a lot of this misinformation that we're getting, we wouldn't have that, because we would know who that person is. We can identify with that person. So I like to thank you for continuing to be loyal to the job. And loyal to your craft.
I love it. I love it.
Loyal to your craft.
How can people get in contact with you, Chester Benton?
I'm online at ChesterBenton75 at yahoo.com. I do a series of promotions called Chester Beach Tribute to Motown. You'll find that on Facebook and also on YouTube. And I'm currently, my official title is COO, whatever that means, of we used to be Christian Broadcasting Company. Now we're CBC, your number one black media network, because we do newspaper, radio, and social media and other things to help get the message across.
In the black community.
In the black community. I mean, it's in my DNA, as you say, because of my upbringing and my mentorship to serve the black community as much as I can, because the job has been good to me, and I want to make sure that there's somebody out there that has heard some of the things that I say, have a little interest, get a job, and carry on the legacy of black radio.
Thank you so much. We've had a great Sunday morning. Thank you so much, Chester B. You all check out his shows that he's doing. I'm Cheryl Wilkerson. We're about to get out of here. Look, have a wonderful Sunday. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And behold the green and gold.